Just 40 miles down the road, the Little Ailey Inn and the town of Rachel. Before that, however, we've a short stop to make at Area 51. Further down the highway, the horizon suddenly expands to include three notable landmarks. Away in the distance, the extraterrestrial highway continues on to eventually reach the small town of Rachel, home of the Little Ailey Inn. Away to the left and in the distance, a dirt track which winds its way to the perimeter bordering Area 51. And here, a distant shot of the Steve Medlin Ranch, about which we're about to hear more. This is the Steve Medlin mailbox, about 20 miles from Rachel, Nevada. Over there is Area 51. A few years ago, this mailbox was painted black. It was a mailbox identified by a gentleman known as Robert Scott Lazar as being on the route to Area 51, a place where he allegedly worked, and back in 1989 came forth and said that the place that he worked, out near Groom Lake, was back engineering alien technology. Well, the farmer Steve Medlin got a little bit cheesed off with people coming along and defacing his mailbox, so he painted it white. Within a few days, somebody had come along and painted it black again. Well, it's a year since we were last out here, but as you can see, the scribes have been busy. All manner of little signatures and the like have been scribbled on top of Steve Medlin's mailbox, and I can see from England, from Ireland, from all over the place. Either way, this is a mailbox that is legendary in UFO folklore. Long may it continue to be so. From the mailbox, it's a long and dusty drive that takes visitors to a point in the road where one can proceed no further. Yes, the perimeter of Area 51 itself. There are no barriers here, railings or guard towers, but warning signs make it abundantly clear that to proceed further could result in a hefty fine, or worse, the use of deadly force. On nearby hills, motion detectors stand out against blue skies. Some say they can even detect smells. Our visit that day didn't escape the attention of nearby security guards, often referred to as the camo dudes. Well, here we are at Area 51, the perimeter range, and in behind me you can actually see one of the so-called camo dudes, the security guards that patrol this perimeter, taking a close look at what we're doing. It's a case of us watching them, watching us, watching them, or something like that. But they're there. Take a look for yourself. After returning to the white mailbox, our journey along the extraterrestrial highway eventually brings us to a small town that is featured in countless magazines and television documentaries worldwide. We're now some 3 hours outside of Las Vegas, here in Rachel, Nevada, home of the Little Ailey Inn. Some might say the UFO capital of the world. Once inside the Little Ailey Inn, visitors are greeted by owners Joe and Pat Travis, whose menu for the famished include alien burgers. The walls here are bedecked with numerous photographs of well-known personalities who have paid a visit to this remote part of Nevada. But whether this particular couple did so is another matter. It's not just UFO enthusiasts who drop in from time to time. It seems that RAF pilots, probably participating in a red flag exercise at Groom Lake, were keen to eyeball this UFO landmark for themselves. Talking of which, we couldn't help but hear the thunderous noise from military jet aircraft overhead. These images demonstrate two things. Firstly, that military aircraft are regular visitors to the skies above Rachel. Secondly, when seen at night, imagine what the untrained eye would make of these two aircraft hurtling across distant mountain tops at incredible speeds. Even allowing for a strong military presence, aviation and defence experts have yet to explain these astonishing objects, filmed in broad daylight several years ago by Englishman Ray Wardle, looking out in the direction of Area 51. Are these the strange and mysterious craft constructed from back-engineered alien technology,
or highly advanced unmanned drones. Perhaps there are UFOs at Area 51, but of a type some prefer to label as unconventional flying objects. The name of George Adamski was once on everyone's lips during the 1950s and early 60s. Of all the so-called contactees, Adamski's claim to fame was augmented by what many consider today to be poorly faked flying saucer footage taken at the time. Certainly, on first viewing, these images understandably attract bouts of laughter. But what if we were to study them through the modern computer? Surely today's technology would easily locate any signs of a hoax. That's precisely what film and photo analyst Russel Callaghan set out to achieve.
One of the fascinating things about modern technology and the availability that the normal man like myself can afford to use the technology that really has only been available to film studios, television producers for many, many years, is that when something like the Adamski footage, which has long been a pet favourite of myself, can be studied very carefully, and from what people used to laugh at many, many years ago, and have been laughing for probably 30 years, we can actually look at it and find that there's something a little bit more substantial to than what we first see. These are actually proof prints from the original film that Madeleine Rodifer and George Adamski filmed back in the 60s. Now, a very high contrast on the film. It was very difficult to see any detail in the object. As you can see on the film, it looks like black shadows, which led people to speculate that probably this was just a hoax, maybe a cardboard cutout, maybe something on a piece of string, the bright light bleaching any signs of string or wires out of the shot. But Bill Sherwood, very clever man, worked for Kodak, light blasted some of the frames and came up with images like this. Now, something that's been scoffed for 30 odd years, all of a sudden, and let's just say that Bill Sherwood did this some 30 years ago, but it's only now that the technology has been available we can actually see these are the same frames. This is the same footage that we're looking at here. This is a genuine frame from that footage. Look at the detail. It's a three-dimensional object. It's no drawing and it's no painting. It's a solid object of 3 dimensions. The thing that Bill Sherwood managed to do was get an accurate measurement on it. And by going back to where Madeleine Rodifer lived and where George Adamski filmed the actual sighting from, determined that the object we were looking at could be no less than 27 feet across. Now that, if it's a model, is quite amazing. There's a lot more footage like this to be looked at. But don't just scoff when somebody shows you something and says, this is a flying saucer. Who knows what it is? But maybe it's not a hoax.
Someone who is convinced that some of George Adamski's footage is perfectly genuine is leading British UFO researcher and best-selling author Timothy Good, who recently granted us this interview about his latest work, Alien Base.
Now, we've had numerous accounts throughout the book, Alien Base, where people have come forward and claimed to have spoken and interacted, if you will, with extraterrestrials, but none more fantastic, I suppose, than a certain gentleman who was a former equerry to the Queen.
Yeah, right. Air Marshal Sir Peter Horsley, yes. I mean, this is an incredible story, but, you know, someone like that who is so credible, I interviewed him, he must have been very highly vetted to get the job of equerry to the Queen and Prince Philip. He's flown 90 different types of aircraft, from the Spitfire to the Vulcan bomber, Deputy Chief of Strike Command, for heaven's sakes. You can't get much higher than that. And here's a man who insists that he met an apparently extraterrestrial human being with whom who was able to read his mind. He didn't have to formulate his questions with his voice. The questions were answered for him. How can we dismiss stories like that? We can dismiss Adamski and Menger if you like, but I don't think we can dismiss someone like him.
When obvious question surfaces, he's talking about extraordinary events from the mid-50s. It's taken him the best part of 45 years to come forward, albeit through his autobiography, to recount these details. What explanation did he give you when you personally interviewed the man?
Well, first of all, he didn't give me an explanation, and I didn't ask him. I said to him, it's very brave of you to come out with this story, Sir Peter, and he said, it's not brave, I simply recount what happened. But I am assuming, I didn't feel the need to answer the question, I am assuming that there's no way he could have come out with that story publicly when he was serving, you know, at Buckingham Palace. There's no way he could have come out with such a story while acting as Deputy Chief of Strike Command or flying Vulcan bombers, for heaven's sakes. So it's only in his retirement that he's felt the freedom to come forward.
But even so, I mean, assuming, for instance, that the man retired at 60 or indeed 65, we're still talking about 15 to 20 years for him to impart that information. Well, doesn't that strike you as odd? Well,
to impart it publicly, it doesn't strike me as odd, no. I've come across many other people. Even the contactee whom I refer to as Joelle, whom I've known since 1952, didn't even want me to write up her story after her death, and she died a few years ago. So in a certain sense, I'm acting against her last wishes.
Something extraordinary appears to be taking place in the skies throughout our planet. But on what scale? And should governments be concerned? Well, it's highly likely that governments are extremely concerned over the UFO issue, but for reasons best known to them, are not prepared to admit to such concerns publicly. But as long as these strange and mysterious objects continue to enter our airspace with impunity, so long as ordinary members of the public continue to be nonplussed by these events, we will continue to question and probe, and hopefully come up with some of the answers.